Hello, welcome to my channel. This is my first ever video, so thanks for watching. I'm kicking this channel off with a interesting subject here, and that's a series I'm calling Broke Photographer's Guide. So Broke Photographer's Guide, what I'm envisioning right now is going to be little tips and tricks here and there that can help other photographers get the most for their money. I'm going to start off with a very bold move, and that is a Broke Photographer's Guide on Leica camera. So if you don't know much about Leica, to give you a really quick intro into them, they are a 100-year-old plus company. They survived both world wars. They are from Germany, and no, they weren't on that side of the war, apparently. I don't know, it's very complicated, but anyways, if you want to know more about their history, there's a channel called Three Blind Men and an Elephant, I think. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I'll link it below and you guys can check out their whole history. So anyways, with that said, they are a very old company. They started off making microscopes, and somewhere along the line in the early 1900s, at some point, they started designing cameras. They pretty much, since the beginning, pushed for the best of the best, quality and luxury. So that being said, they are considered a luxury brand. So that is kind of why I want to start off with this challenge. The other reason I wanted to do these videos is because in my short time as a photographer, as I've been carrying around a Leica branded camera, I've gotten some weird looks, some weird comments. Kind of dumb, but whatever. Honestly, I think if you really compare it to top of the line Canon products and Sony products, you're almost paying the same thing, really. So it's not that big of a difference. But just to show you a little bit here, the SL2 is what's out and hot right now in July 2020, sort of, at least with Leica. This is one of their top of the line cameras. It has 47.3 megapixels, and it's running for $6,000 just the body alone. If we look at the M series, which is another one of their great cameras, so this one's kind of interesting because you have the M10P right here, which gives you, what you would expect, but it's 24 megapixels. And then you have this M10 here, monochrome. What monochrome means is it's actually only a black and white camera. So I just find it, in short of offending anybody, I find it very ballsy of them to put out a $9,000 camera almost here. That just takes black and white photos. And honestly, I'm not dissing them. I love them. They had Lenny Kravitz as part of their advertisement and marketing for this camera, and a couple other rock stars that I love. And honestly, I'm very intrigued. Like, if I had that money, I would totally spend it just to know what the hell it's like to take a photo with this camera. One day, hopefully, right? Okay, so right off the top, in Broke Photographer's Guide, we're not going to focus in these two models. Obviously, they're way out of our price budget. We're actually going to jump here into the VLUX series. Now, I'm starting with the VLUX 114, which is actually a model behind. Right now, the VLUX 5 is out, and I'm sorry if the numbers don't make sense. The VLUX Typ 114 actually came out in between the VLUX 4 and 5. So the VLUX Typ 114 was released a couple years ago, and the VLUX 5 was released a couple months ago. But for the sake of this video, and for the sake of keeping the cost down, this is how I'm going to introduce you guys and do a Broke Photographer's Guide on Leica. So as you see, the price is significantly cheaper. And if you want to even take it further, unfortunately, I don't see used models down here. They usually have used models available somewhere down here, but in this case, I think they're probably not in stock. So what we're going to do, just to give you guys an idea, I'm a huge eBay fan, and yes, you're going to kind of have to accept the fact that a lot of these Broke Photographer guides revolve around the fact that you will be buying used. And in this particularly interesting case, it looks like there may not be no used cameras for sale for the VLUX 114. There we go. Okay. So sorry about that. In this particular case, this listing looks like it ended, but you can get these cameras from $700. I've seen them drop all the way down to $500. So I think it's just a matter of continuously looking. Like, there's a couple here that are still available from the looks of it that are on the $900 range, but that's actually not a good price because you could get it for $900 off of B&H here, brand new. But anyways, eBay's a great resource. Facebook Marketplace as well, Craigslist. Search them around. I got my VLUX 114 for $700 off of eBay. to tell you. And literally, I have filmed multiple versions of this video because I've had to correct several parts of this video, unfortunately. And a couple weeks ago when I did a recording previously, I was seeing the VLUX 14s for $500. So keep your eyes peeled, and you'll get a deal out at some point in one of those platforms. But yes, the VLUX is the way to enter the Leica realm. One thing you need to know is that this camera has an integrated lens. What that means is this lens does not come off. There's no interchangeable lens. There's no way to remove that lens. It is integrated. That's a big downside for many people. But another purpose of this video is to actually show you the camera and show you how versatile it is. That one lens will blow your mind on how much it can do. It has certainly blown my mind on how much it's capable of doing, and this is why I am pumping up this camera because it is a really cool camera to have in your arsenal. It has from 25mm to 400mm equivalency, so it has quite a zoom and quite a wide angle as well. And because of that, whenever I go on trips, I go on hikes or whatever, and I want to bring my camera, this is the camera I grab because I don't want to be changing lenses. So anyways, as part of Broke Photographer's Guide, one thing I want to kind of review with you guys is kind of treat this camera like if I'm going to buy it, and kind of just go through the process of reviewing the specs and whatnot. So let's start off here. This is actually the data sheet, the technical data that I got off straight from the Leica page, and this is the VLUX Type 114, and we're going to look at the technical data for it. So I've already previously highlighted things of interest if I'm shopping for a camera and I'm looking at this camera. So first things first is you have image stabilization. Now that's a huge thing nowadays. In more recent times, cameras are coming in with multiple axis image stabilizations. This has a very early version of image stabilization, but I think it still does a phenomenal job. Another thing, as I've already said, it has a hell of a zoom. That lens comes out quite a bit, and I believe it still has a digital zoom as well, in addition to actual physical zoom. So this little thing is what just sold the camera to me. That lens, if it doesn't do enough already, it has macro capabilities, which is awesome. Because in any other world scenario of any other DSLR or camera, for the most part, if you want to do macro, you're buying a whole nother lens that's just only for macro. But in this case, you have that macro functionality built into this amazing lens. Another very interesting fact is you are using a 1-inch sensor, not a crop sensor, so that is very impressive for the price point. Here's a couple resolution things. So what I highlighted here in resolution that blew me away is, yes, the camera does 4K for being a couple years old. So the camera's capable of doing something very similar to 120 frames per second, but not quite. It's listed here as 120 BPS with high-speed video. I'll show you what that looks like later on the video when we get hands-on with the camera. Oh, another thing that's interesting here is ISO sensitivity. This is another thing I really pay attention to a lot in my cameras is, you know, how's it going to perform in low light situations or at night. In my personal opinion, this camera does not do well at all at night, so I would avoid it unless you're doing long exposure. At long exposure, it does phenomenal. And just you always want to make sure you keep it between 1 and 200 on ISO. Unless you really love the grain, then go ahead and pump it up. You do have a nice integrated flash, and it is the most adorable little flash you will ever see. You have a monitor that angles out and pulls out, which is amazing because it lets you do all these complex positions as a photographer where you could still see your screen and what image you're capturing. Here's one thing I've come to realize with my experience with this camera. The viewfinder, I'm not a fan of. I can't quite put my finger on it. I feel like it's a little too pixelated. For the most part, I think I use a monitor 90% of the time anyway. You have built-in mic and speaker, and here's a couple things about the outputs and the interfaces. So you do have an HDMI, you have a USB, you have a 3.5mm for the mic and a 2.5 for the remote. You have Wi-Fi capabilities and apparently NFC capabilities. I highlighted operating temperature and humidity just, you know, in case you're a traveler and you want to take into account those things. And that's it. That's it in a nutshell. So those are the highlights on the spec sheet of this camera. So next we're going to jump into a hands-on. So this is it right here. The Leica VLUX Type 114. As you can see, I have pretty large hands. Just to kind of show you a little comparison, I have a standard Jim Beam bottle here, and that's how big my hands are and what it looks like kind of next to the camera. If you need another example, standard deck of cards. So it's a pretty large, hefty camera, I'd say. So you come equipped with the lens hood and a lens cap. My VLUX actually has a UV filter on it to protect the lens a little bit more as well. So up here you have 25 to 400 marked right there, and that's your range. On the side you have some controls of the lens. You can toggle between having the ring control the zoom or the focus, and you can toggle the ring itself on or off. Up at the top, multi-shot control and your shot control. So this will activate your timer for 3 or 15 seconds, a couple exposure settings, and your multi-shot and single shot settings. So on this side you have your flash switch, which, let's do that one more time just so you can see how fast that is. Yeah, that's your little flash right there, the most adorable flash you'll ever see. Also on this side you have the audio input for an external mic if you wish to use one and hook one up. And then lastly, you have a little control knob here. It's for the EVF in case you have prescription glasses, I believe is the case. It kind of just blurs the image. So that's kind of what I think it is for. So that kind of takes care of most of this side of the camera. On this side is where you have the majority of your controls. Obviously you could see this is your function control, so this is where you switch between aperture priority, shutter priority, manual, and a couple custom settings. Let's go ahead and fire up the camera. The power button is right here located next to the function wheel. So as you see, as soon as I power it on, the lens extends. If you want to see the full length of its extension, here it goes. That's 400. I use zoom control, as you could tell from here, but honestly I like it. I don't have an issue with it. I don't really like using the ring because it doesn't feel natural to me quite yet. It still feels very electronic because it is. So I just prefer to always keep the ring for focusing and use this for zoom in and out, and then your shutter button's right here with the zoom feature. Then you have your record button, which is this red dot one right here, and then next to it you have a function 1 button. Now what function 1 button does when you press it is on the screen you'll see you get some photo styles available, and I'll do my best to show it here, but as I toggle through you'll see the colors kind of change on my live view. You could preset your shot using these settings pretty much. So this is where you have the ability to go full black and white if you wanted to as well. Okay, moving on to function 2. Function 2 is strictly for Wi-Fi. So there is an accompanying app that goes with the VLUX, and that lets you control your camera remotely and transfer photos over to your phone as well. Probably time we just went through all the function keys here. So right now I'm actually on movie mode. Right next to it will be manual mode. If I switch one more, it's shutter priority, then aperture priority, then portrait. Then you have full auto. COL is interesting. It's kind of like function 1 but with more of a punch. So you have 8 presetted options that really mess with the colors and the dynamics and all that. So they're actually pretty fun to use even if you're an experienced photographer, and if you're a brand new photographer, then this is an awesome way for you to get amazing shots. That was COL. Next you have scene mode. This is very similar to COL except it kind of gives you more defined settings. So like for example, this one's for silky skin, this one's a backlift softness. It kind of just describes to you what you can do, and you have a whole mess of them. I think there's even a long exposure one here. So if you're new to photography, you can use these presets and it'll probably get you exactly what you see here on the photo. Moving on, you have C2 and C1. These are custom options for you to custom set whatever settings you would like for your camera and either setting. So I always keep it on manual, obviously. Moving forward, we just touched function 2 and then moved to the wheel. So function 3 would be next, and function 3 button is located right here, right by right in between the focus knob here. So when I press that, it gives me function 1 settings again, but it gives me the ability to toggle through, and this is where I could turn off my flash, set my recording modes, whether it's 720, 1080 or whatnot. Set my aspect ratio 16:9, focusing, focus points, metering mode, aperture, sensitivity, ISO, white balance, all that fun stuff. That's function 3. So it's called a quick menu, I believe. Right underneath that you have your play button. So right now I don't have any photos to show you guys, but this is where you would review your shots. Right underneath that you have a display. button, and what that does is it toggles the display and what's available. So right here you just have the good old level, and if you keep toggling you have all these different options to where it goes just completely black. I like to keep it about here. I like seeing as many settings as I can. Sometimes I toggle it to just show me the photo and the level, which is good enough. Moving down forward a little bit more, we're getting into the arrow keys here. So on the arrow keys, the arrow key up actually gives you quick ISO control. So this is where you can toggle your ISO from auto to just keeping it at 100 or 125 or 200, whatever your settings may be. If we do arrow key to the right, this is our quick white balance settings. And if we do arrow key down, this is where we enable macro mode. So it's currently set to off, but if you ever need to take an up close shot, let's go ahead and enable it. So I took a quick shot of my USB port there. Probably a terrible macro shot, but just to give you a little bit of an idea. And then if we do arrow key to the left, this is a quick autofocus mode for you to set, face detection or multi-point or whatever you may be needing at that exact moment. Okay, so we finished up all the arrow keys. So now if you actually press the center key or the select key, or it's actually labeled menu set, this brings you to your actual menu for the whole camera. So it's a lot different from Nikon or Canon from what I've experienced, but it's broken down in a pretty basic way. So here you have all your recording options, and that's mainly for photography. And you'll see the little icon and what it applies to. So by the way, this is not touchscreen. Motion picture, so obviously this is for your recording movies and MP4s. I mentioned previously that this camera had the ability to do something very similar to 120 frames per second. To set that, you can set that two ways from what I remember. Apparently there's a way where you could do it on either 1080 option. The way I know you can do it for sure is if you put it at the 1280 by 720 option. Now I know that's a terrible quality, but bear with me. We're going to go ahead and move our camera into movie mode, by the way. And we're going to go back to that menu. And you'll see that high-speed video is set to on already, because I had already previously set that. So if we go ahead and record. So you see I'm kind of snapping my fingers in real time. But anyways, that's how you do the slow motion setting on this camera. So let's go back to manual mode and back to the settings. So camera settings, movie settings, moving down one more, you have your custom settings. So this is where you can edit all your custom options for the custom wheel function up here to other smaller custom menus. I think some of these FN buttons have customizations as well. This is your standard setup to format SD cards, set the time and whatnot, and then these are your playback settings for when you're reviewing your shots or videos. Alright, function 4 is the last button at the bottom here, so when you press that, so this is an interesting function. It's really handy in general, really. So what it does is when you press it, it activates your active shutter speed. So right now my shutter speed is at 1.3, which is really slow, and you'll see that I hope you're seeing my camera is extremely delayed, the live view, and the reason that is because it's giving me an actual idea of what the camera is going to capture. So this is one of those moments where, like, if you're like, hey, I don't have enough light and I'm bringing my shutter speed really low, or making my shutter speed really slow, I wonder if I need a tripod so I don't get any camera shake. Well, if you activate that setting, it'll tell you if you need a tripod or if you just need to hold your camera extremely steady or really tight, so you don't move it. Function 5 here on the side kind of toggles the view. So you have a little sensor here. And when that sensor is blocked, it automatically transmits to the EVF and turns off your LCD. If for any reason that's bugging you and like you're putting this eye sensor close to your stomach or something, if you toggle it, it'll disable it. You have to toggle it a couple times because I think it'll go between the first time you press it, it'll just transmit everything to the EVF, and the second time you press it, it'll just disable the sensor. Okay, cool. Those are most of the functions. The only one I haven't reviewed is the focus function up here, and it's a focus wheel, I guess you could call it. So it just lets you toggle between autofocus standard, autofocus continuous, and autofocus manual, or sorry, just manual focus, duh. So yeah, and you can also, if you have something in focus, you can also lock that focus in. So if you move the shot, you don't lose that focus on that one item. And then lastly, this wheel right here, this is how you control your shutter speed and your aperture. So right now it's controlling my shutter speed, and this is my aperture. One thing I just realized I never mentioned in my whole video, your aperture ranges between 2.8 to 8.0, by the way. It is a very limited aperture, and that's probably a big downside for many photographers, but you're able to get away with a lot, I think. And if you really need like that depth of field type of shot, I've been able to fake it with this camera, and you do it by kind of just extending the lens sometimes as much as you can, and it'll kind of fake a depth of field. Obviously your subject has to be a bit far, but I can definitely show you guys what it's like to shoot with this camera on the field. So yeah, this is Leica VLUX 114. This is all part of my Broke Photographer's Guide. So if you want to get into Leica, this is your first and easiest step in to having a modern camera for a fraction of the price. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a blast to make these. I will continue to put these up, and if I see any interest, I'll continue to make videos. But thanks so much guys for watching.